collegato, ecco. Ecco. Allora, adesso si sente, no? Accendete le luci, Elisabetta, accendete le luci della sala. Ecco, brava. Allora, dicevo, sentiamo alcuni di coloro che non abbiamo sentito, ma tanto per avviare i lavori, poi il Congresso si confermerà, si arricchirà, ciascun intervento verrà poi trascritto, non sentono? Come? Sì, accendere le luci ho detto, sì, se si possono accendere le luci. Come? Sì, ma anche lei, Annie, dicevo. Allora, quindi sentiamo coloro che non abbiamo sentito questa mattina. È un laboratorio, quindi ciascun intervento verrà poi trascritto e farà parte di volumi successivi che noi pubblichiamo. Allora, per un breve intervento adesso, sempre breve, poi ce ne saranno molti altri, chiamiamo David Rasnick, breve, poi interverrà altre volte. Vi prego di spegnere i telefoni, per favore, anche per poter lavorare, insomma. Sì. Allora, Salomon Rasnick, un intervento breve, poi interverrà altre volte. Ciuciut.
Okay.
Intervento breve, poi interverrà altre volte. Ok.
I understand. Okay, it's very difficult for me to do anything short. I'm a Southerner. A lot of you were here last July when I was here, so I'll try to be brief anyway. The first items that I wanted to discuss actually are short anyway. I wanted to talk about the obstacles to a cure for whatever we're trying to cure, whether it's AIDS, cancer, any disease that you can think of. If it is possible technically to cure cancer, I happen to be optimistic. I think that in the future we'll be able to do that. I don't believe the chief obstacles will be technical. They'll actually be political and metaphorical. For example, in the 1970s, President Nixon had his famous war on cancer, and it was modeled after the Manhattan Project of World War II, which was essentially an engineering project to build the first atomic bombs. They were not really scientific efforts, they were principally engineering. And then we have Clinton's war on AIDS of the 1990s, and again, both presidents are using the war metaphor, thinking that you can just overpower diseases and medical, maybe scientific issues, the same way that you could solve engineering problems like building the atomic bomb. And I think that military metaphor of war is seriously flawed. We'll go into that in a lot more detail later. And then that's at the political, the very high levels of government. Then we also have the institutional dogma, which is a serious problem that Peter Duesberg and I run into all the time. For example, during the Reagan's war on cancer, Nixon's war on cancer, there were many competing hypotheses of cancer, but the viral hypothesis that cancer was a viral infectious disease dominated back in the 70s. And then that failed, and then it was replaced by the now prevalent dogma of the oncogene hypothesis that we'll go into a lot more detail. And these hypotheses are they're dogmas. Nothing else is allowed to be considered or discussed or to be funded. And they're protected by monolithic sources of funding. For example, in the biological area, health area in the United States, the sources of funding are the National Institutes of Health, and in AIDS, for example, a single institution, the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease. Anthony Fauci has $1.8 billion a year that he gets to go through his hands, and you have to have HIV plastered all over every page of your document in order to get any penny of that money. And then we have the often touted peer review process. And I was just talking with Huw Christie, and I prefer his description of it. It's ideological review. The peer review is, in essence, where you have lots of people in an area who are established, and they use as the argument that they're trying to protect the quality of the field. Whether it's in AIDS or cancer, they don't want to taint the field with some ideas that are not acceptable, or maybe harmful. So they have to have their imprimatur on your paper or your grant proposal before you'll either get funded or you can get your paper published in the literature. In essence, what the peer review does, though, in effect, it doesn't protect the quality of science at all. It protects the jobs of those who already have funding. If you have staked your career and reputation on HIV, this is a very effective way to protect it. You don't let other views, other hypotheses compete with it effectively. They can't get published, can't get funded. And so that's we need to change this monolithic source of funding. We have to have multiple sources of funding, and we have to completely restructure and rethink this peer review that we're going. So that's probably my short little thing. I did it.
No.
No, it's okay. I have a lot more, and we have two more days.
Perfetto.
Good.
Ma infatti quello a cui accennavo questa mattina è proprio questo, che noi stiamo esplorando altre fonti di finanziamento e anche quelle stesse che sono già previste, no? Anche per altri, e quindi in modo da avere accesso. Questo oggi comincia a essere possibile in Italia e in Europa, attraverso l'Unione Europea e attraverso la Regione Lombardia, attraverso il Ministero a Roma e poi attraverso i privati e attraverso anche altre forme di finanziamento che bisogna trovare di maniera anche diretta, no? Stiamo discutendo proprio di questo. Questa mattina abbiamo parlato proprio di questo. Poi è bellissimo questo che dicevamo, no? Che finora c'è la cura è stata presa in modo demonologico, la campagna contro il cancro, la campagna contro l'AIDS, la campagna contro la droga, insomma, come campagna, no? La campagna contro la malattia mentale, no? E quindi il discorso della guerra e il discorso della morte, che è praticamente il discorso occidentale, è diventato discorso comune e luogo comune. Questo che dicevamo, sì. Va bene, allora poi riprendiamo. Possiamo chiamare per una breve comunicazione, poi riprenderemo Charles Geschechter. Allora, raccontato tante cose di Charles Schechter questa mattina, e quindi coloro che non sono venuti non possono accedere a tutte queste informazioni. Comunque sentiranno adesso lui per la prima volta. Allora ribadiamo che ha fatto un'indagine intorno all'Africa. Anche recentemente c'è stata una campagna, la campagna di tutti i paesi industrializzati contro l'AIDS in Africa, no? E quindi dicendo quanti milioni di africani erano affetti, no? Da questo male e del millennio, no? Dal secolo al millennio, e quindi male di fine millennio, male di inizio millennio, e quindi praticamente qualsiasi malanno attribuito all'AIDS, quindi non trattabile. Prego. Che ha fatto un'indagine proprio intorno all'Africa.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'll be very brief. My training is as an African historian, particularly with great interest in economic history of Africa. My trip to South Africa last month was my 15th visit to the continent. Much of my research took place in Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, which of course has a historical connection to Italy, and other parts of East Africa, notably Kenya, Zanzibar, and Tanzania. I became very concerned and deeply alarmed by many of the conformist views about AIDS in Africa back in the late 1980s. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know how researchers knew with such conviction that their numbers were accurate. And that's what I'm interested in, is accuracy with numbers, counting and measuring any social phenomenon. And I wondered how these figures, which always drive the news reports about Africa, were accurate. Upon what were they based? I was troubled by the definition of an AIDS case in Africa, which, as most of you know, differs decisively from the definition of an AIDS case in Australia, or Italy, or California, or Western Europe. So my presentation later will involve, I think, a scrutinizing of the numbers game, as I call it, or the numbers racket regarding HIV seroprevalence, or the actual number of AIDS cases in Africa. A second area that has troubled me and concerned me deeply involves the connection between the numbers of HIV seroprevalence or AIDS cases and the very glib and easy use of very old, very tired, and very racist stereotypes about black people and sex. And I'm often shocked, as a historian of Africa, to hear prejudices and biases that I thought were laid to rest decades ago reappear as if they are true. And so I went to South Africa trying to investigate this as well, about prostitutes, truck drivers, green monkeys, a whole range of other points that are made about AIDS in Africa. I want to illustrate my presentation later on with slides. I don't have many, but we are here surrounded by all kinds of wonderful examples of the visual arts in terms of painting. I'm not a painter, I'm just a historian, but I think that some of the photographs and some of the slides that I've brought back will be of great interest, and I hope they are provocative to the audience here, because I went to an area of South Africa, it's called KwaZulu-Natal, which is said to be the epicenter of this Dante's Inferno in South Africa. I went to the epicenter of the AIDS epidemic, to the valley of AIDS death. And while I was there, while I was watching very closely what was going on, just to be sure, I was reciting the Lord's Prayer. You know, yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil. Well, I went to the valley of AIDS death and came back. And what I will report, I think, is an attempt to try to desensationalize, demystify, and probably take apart the core assumptions about AIDS in Africa. Finally, while I was in Africa this time, I had the great good fortune of meeting with some extremely important people in the South African government. I had a chance to sit for an hour and a half with the African woman who is a physician herself, Dr. Manto Shabalala Msimang. And Dr. Shabalala Msimang is the Minister of Health for South Africa. And as I sat in her office for 90 minutes talking about this and about my own research, I was joined there with the Registrar of Medicines, the woman who has to decide whether or not, in fact, to allow Glaxo Wellcome to import AZT, for example, and also the top epidemiologist for the South African government. And I'm here to tell the audience that as of the early part of December, top people in the Ministry of Health in the Republic of South Africa are very well aware of the dissident point of view. They're extremely conscious of the science, of Dr. Duisberg's work, of the publicity given to these kind of criticisms by people like Joan Shenton and others. And we had very far-ranging, but very sensitive and I think very prudent conversations about what can be done next. And I would close by saying the next AIDS conference, fortuitously, is going to take place in South Africa. It will be in Durban from the 9th to the 15th of July. President Mbeki, who succeeded Nelson Mandela in June of '99, President Mbeki is going to have his first State of the Republic address on February the 4th, where he will address the Houses of Parliament in South Africa. And I think I would urge everyone to pay close attention to that speech. I can't predict the future. I have enough trouble understanding the past. But I think if you listen carefully to that speech on February the 4th, you might begin to hear for the first time some early evidence that at the presidential level in South Africa, they too understand that something is terribly amiss and terribly wrong about what we think we know about HIV and AIDS in Africa. Thank you very much.
Mi accorgo che i nostri amici adoperano spesso questa opposizione fra dissenso e sistema delle ortodossie. Siccome da 30 anni abbiamo fatto vari congressi, appelli, dibattiti, libri e produzioni differenti, intellettuali, e a proposito dei regimi, già negli anni 70 dicevamo che il dissenso in fin dei conti favorisce sempre il sistema. Se noi adoperiamo dissenso da una parte e ortodossia dall'altra, l'ortodossia sarà sempre favorita, sempre confermata. Il termine interessante è dissidenza. Dissidenza è differente da dissenso. Dissidenza, quindi, non è dissenso. Dissidenza è pertanto la particolarità, è l'idioma, è quindi la logica particolare. e quindi la logica della parola, proprio ciò che è assente dall'apparato medico legale in generale. Sentiamo allora altri in questa rapido avviamento, no, di questo nostro laboratorio congressuale. Poi questo si confermerà in vario modo sempre più con il dibattito procedendo. Kevin Corbett. C'è? Sì, eccolo qua. Kevin Corbett, quindi è più che altro sociologo, no? Sociologo, quindi lavora a Londra, negli ultimi 5 anni i suoi studi sono concentrati sulle risposte psicosociali ai testi dell'AIDS, come ai testi degli anticorpi, eccetera. Quindi, insomma, la sua analisi è sociologica. Allora, ecco, è laureato in Belle Arti, ma lui capisce, no? Italiano, no? Sì, ha capito tutto, quindi perché vuoi che prenda l'apparecchio? Kevin Corbett, allora è laureato in Belle Arti, e le Belle Arti, cioè, sono delle cose che chi è laureato in Belle Arti non può accettare, quindi la mitologia del contagio non può essere accettata. Prego, allora. Breve.
Thank you very much. My training is as a nurse and also as a nurse academic. So my practice is as a teacher and an educator within a university establishment. I have also practiced as a nurse in AIDS and HIV care and in other general medical orthodox, or as I should say, conformist environments in a way. And I first engaged with critical understandings of HIV and AIDS through listening to people who are diagnosed from antibody tests, people who were labeled HIV antibody positive. And just to give you one example, this is many years ago now, because I no longer practice in the mainstream AIDS health services in the United Kingdom. A patient was admitted to the unit where I worked and was disputing the premise, the basis of his diagnosis, and was questioning not just the efficacy of the HIV antibody test, but the link that was being made to the tumor that was being diagnosed growing in his chest. He was disputing the link between his antibody test result and the construction of his AIDS diagnosis. And my interest in this was not as a clinician but as an academic, and my interest was also in the professionals treating the patient and their responses to this particular situation. And if I can just cut a long story short, the patient was labelled as having a dementia, an AIDS dementia, and his own account and his own understandings of the situation were not legitimated or validated by the professionals in any way. And this gave me great cause for concern that we weren't listening to the public understanding, the public meanings that were being developed around the whole testing technology. And from this, I decided to research the whole field in a critical way, having had worked from within that field itself. And this took me out of clinical AIDS care into a whole area of what we would call, I suppose, sociology of health and illness, and to look at the technology of screening for illness, our modern biotechnology of screening, which constructs, by its very nature, pathology from wellness. And my presentation will be around this issue and about the public understandings of the technology upon which their diagnoses, their mainstream diagnoses are based. So it is a critical view of AIDS screening technology.
In pratica stiamo enunciando la nostra table de matière. È così che è stato interpretato, no? Il mio appello di una comunicazione breve. Va bene, allora Fabio Bianchi deve ancora arrivare? Deve ancora arrivare, no? Franchi? Cosa ho detto io? No, ho detto Franchi o Bianchi? Franchi. Va bene. Fabio Franchi deve ancora arrivare, no? Franchi. Perfetto. Allora, in breve Lucien Sfez farà poi successivi interventi. Ormai il libro noi in questa sede lo abbiamo letto e quindi ci dirà qualche breve cosa, poi interverrà più volte durante le 3 giornate, perché adesso sta preparando un altro libro intorno a biotecnologia oppure tecnologia e utopia. No?
Jérémy, tu veux une table des matières?
Non, non, non.
Non, parce que je peux tout faire. Hein?
D'accord.
Si tu veux table des matières, je dis des choses qui sont un petit peu introductives, c'est-à-dire un peu trop introductives.
D'accord.
Et si tu m'autorises à aller un petit peu plus loin, je peux faire en un quart d'heure quelque chose d'un petit peu plus substantiel. Tu choisis.
Substantiel, non?
Non, pas substantiel. Bon, alors
non,
pas
non.
substantiel. Bon.
Sans substance.
Sans substance, alors d'accord.
Étant donné qu'avec la transsubstantiation, il n'y a plus de substance.
Bon, alors.
La transsubstantiation, c'est ça. C'est le théorème de la transsubstantiation, c'est ça. Il n'y a plus de substance.
Bon. Alors nous allons. Le mieux, c'est que je fasse quelques paroles introductives. Che sono un fond d'auto-presentazione, e questo può farlo in italiano, difatti. Penso che mi sono sempre stato interessato alle forme di dominazione ideologiche della modernità, perché quelle che si chiamano comunismo, socialismo, liberalismo, mi parecevano sempre molto lavorate e qualche volta un poco troppo volgarmente, e erano molto semplici, erano nei giornali. Quando qualche cosa c'è è nel giornale, è già fatta la ricerca. Io mi sono interessato alle forme di dominazione ideologiche della postmodernità. Si chiama della detta postmodernità, non ci credo, ma la detta postmodernità. Sono delle forme di dominazione con l'ideologia, basate sull'ideologia della tecnologia, sia della tecnologia della decisione. Per esempio negli anni 70, 60, in America, 70 in Europa, l'ideologia delle decisioni era l'ideologia del PPBS, Planning, Programming and Budgeting System, della razionalità del calcolo economico. Siamo ancora qui, non è completamente superato. Era l'epoca dove si pensava che con una certa quantità di aerei e di cannoni si poteva superare il comunismo al Vietnam o a Cuba. Abbiamo visto il risolto. E per questa prima periodo c'è una sorta di autocritica di uno dei principali responsabili che era McNamara. Ha detto quello era falso, perché non si può superare qualche cosa di qualitativo come la volontà di indipendenza, per esempio, con la quantità. Questo McNamara l'ha detto. Seconda periodo è la periodo della comunicazione. Tutte le tecnologie della comunicazione, e ci siamo ancora in questa periodo. Tutto internet, ma non è il caso di criticare internet per i suoi usi effettivi, per esempio il sito di qui, no? Non è un problema di critica della tecnica, ma dei discorsi tenuti quanto alla tecnica. Internet che risolve tutti i problemi. Non sapeva questo, non sapeva cela? Risolve i problemi del sapere, della comunicazione, della felicità, dell'equalità. Questo è una farsa. Si dice una farsa? No, è una cattiva farsa, perché l'inegualità di sviluppamento, per esempio, non può fare che un savant, un scientista di un paese non sviluppato sia l'uguale di un altro. Questo non è vero, perché non è un affare di egualità dello spirito, è un affare di egualità di medi, di forti medi economici. Et la troisième période, c'est la période où nous sommes aujourd'hui avec les biotechnologies, i problemi delle biotecnologie, che sono molto più avanzati agli Stati Uniti. Avevo ascoltato ieri qualche amici americani che dicevano che c'era più di un migliaia di imprese biotecnologiche in California, 2 migliaia. Ho sentito questo. Ma in Europa non ci siamo qui. Et le problème n'est pas du tout l'entreprise elle-même, mais tutti i discorsi tenuti sull'interpresa, la pubblicità, i discorsi alla televisione e tutte le cose massive, ultramassive che sono dette, che la questione del gene, come dit-on del genio, è fondamentale e risolve, ancora essa, risolve tutto il problema dell'umanità. Dunque, voilà, je suis intéressé par tout ça, et si vous voulez, quando vorrà, farò un intervento un poco più sostanziale.
Allora, Joan Shenton, un primo intervento. Stamattina abbiamo raccontato di lei tante cose, giornalista della BBC. Ecco. 4 o 5 programmi intorno all'AIDS, poi è stata stoppata dall'apparato medico, legale, farmaceutico, e prosegue a fare altri programmi di altra natura, ma non quelli, ma non intorno all'AIDS, e tuttavia non ha smesso di dedicarsi a questo argomento per la raccolta di materiale importantissimo di varie parti del mondo, e quindi costituendo un archivio insieme con altri davvero formidabile su questo argomento. Prego.
Thank you very much, Professor Verdiglione, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm a journalist, and for personal reasons, I specialized in science and medicine. I'll go into the detail of that later because I think surrounded by eminent psychoanalysts here, the motivation behind why I went into this might be of interest later. And I myself have had 17 years of psychoanalysis, and I always call it the best investment I've ever made. But I'm going to talk very briefly now about the fact that I chose to look into drug injury, and that is injury from prescribed drugs, and made 2 series called Kill or Cure about the pharmaceutical industry and how they tried always to avoid withdrawing toxic and damaging drugs. And then when the AIDS, when AIDS appeared on the scene, I thought I'm not going to touch AIDS because everyone is very, very absorbed. All the world's journalists are doing a fantastic job. And really there's no need for me to investigate behind the scenes. But a colleague of mine called Jad Adams went to California and met Peter Duisberg, and that changed our lives because we embarked upon a course of programs challenging the virus AIDS hypothesis, which amounted to 8 network documentaries that have been shown around the world. And tomorrow I'd like to show you 3 short snippets from 3 programs, 2 that were broadcast, one about Africa that Charles Koshekta might have mentioned, and another called the AIDS Catch, which was what actually meant that we were taken to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission in Britain. That story I will tell you tomorrow. And the third is a 10-minute news item that was banned in Britain, but luckily I kept international rights and I was able to put it onto the internet. And that 10-minute news report I did with Huw Christie, who was the editor of Continuum magazine. And in the old days, those 10 minutes would never have been seen. But because I kept the international rights, I was able to put it on the internet legally without being sued by Channel 4. So that'll be tomorrow. I'll briefly say that over these 16 years now, it's 13 years that I've been involved in the AIDS debate. Apart from being dragged through what I call, by the scruff of the neck, a PhD in molecular biology by Peter Duisberg over there and his colleagues who have all helped me from the science point of view. We have amassed a huge archive of documents, and Professor Verdiglione mentioned that we're very, very keen to digitalize these documents and to make them available on the internet. So that is a very exciting future scheme. And I will finish by saying that I look forward to talking more tomorrow. Thank you.
Hector Simpson.
everybody. It's nice to be here. I enjoyed much as everybody else. It makes a stark contrast to the last time I saw Professor Duisberg, which was at a near riot lecture in Berlin in 1955, where he showed his mettle by sticking it out for 2 hours and grinding the people down, the opponents who were setting off crackers, playing ghetto blasters, sabotaging the PA system. And in the end, I think he got out 3 hours later, presumably starving, because dealing with all the fans he'd made while he was talking. Now, when Professor Verdiglione sent me a fax to give the title to the present meeting, I read it to be cancer, AIDS, and infectious diseases. In fact, the latter was just in my mind, but I thought he might well have included it, because if he had, he would have just about said everything that was rotten in the state of Denmark, with apologies to our Danish friend here. That's an English saying from Shakespeare, I think. There won't be too many of those, because oh yes, there he is. I mean, medicine is for the last 10 years or so, less of the last 5, AIDS has played a rather significant part of my life, and I used to think that AIDS was a one-off derailment. In fact, I followed an early dissident in this line, but in fact, of course, it's just par for the course. Medicine, modern medicine, and if you look at the history of medicine, it's just been a disaster throughout, hasn't it? I mean, there's been bloodlettings, there have been cuspings, there have been leeches, there have been black bile, yellow bile, green bile, and I mean, it's all just been horrific. And no doubt the sociologically minded amongst you will have rich material at your disposal to explain how all this comes about. But the ordinary man in the street, who I am one, the situation is truly appalling, isn't it? People think that, as in fact is true, medical doctors, I have little to do with them, fortunately, are remarkably nice people as a group, and it is quite astounding how they are wrong about everything in practice. I mean, and if somebody said, for example, find a cure for AIDS, it's terribly simple. Just stop taking drugs. I mean, I know that there was some murmurs of dissent will occur because there might be 5% of people who do not suffer who do not have AIDS through drug use. They've got it through the psychological effect of being told that the death sentence, in effect, of HIV. Anyway, to return more to the point, my interest in cancer dates from 1994, rather after the high point of AIDS, and when it's, well, how should I put it, when it seemed as if it could be possible that the AIDS scourge could be removed. But after the Berlin AIDS Conference of '93, a very successful AZT conference in London, with Peter Duisberg, lots of articles in Nature, in The Lancet, Neville Hodgkins in the Sunday Times. There seemed to be a new item of AIDS in the public domain every week. But by '94, this had really abated for various reasons, and I suppose that's just the way of the world. Anyway, what had triggered my interest in cancer was, of course, until then, Professor Verdiglione said earlier on, I should have, in fact, been spending my time from 1970 to about 1990 helping people work out how HIV causes AIDS, not whether it causes AIDS. But in fact, I didn't do that, and not through excessive prescience on my part, but because I always thought there must have been something more interesting to do in life than sitting working out what p53 protein might do in cancer and so on. And I think, by and large, well, I have little doubt, in fact, I made the right decision, a passive decision. I mean, it must be terribly frustrating for people to have worked for 20 years trying to work out which environmental factor or nutritional factor or smoking factor causes cancer, when in fact none of them do. It would have been, I just pretend to be in my 40s as a result of having to wear reading glasses, but that's a German joke. German opticians have signs in their windows saying that, you know, your year of birth, and it says it's your turn now. But in fact, because I spent a lot of time at the dentist, I realized I'm well past my 40s, and so in fact I could admit, in 1964, when I first became aware that smoking was supposed to be the cause of cancer, I had the good fortune in virgolette, how do you say that in English? How do you say that? Inverted commas, yes. That Richard Doll, who is, I don't know whether the name means anything to people on the over here or in the wider world, at least in England, he's the byword for epidemiological proof that cigarette smoking causes cancer, and if you should ever doubt it, it says on even your packets here, il fumo provoca il cancro. Well, when I was last in Italy, you didn't have this sort of nonsense, but we've had it a long time in England, and I think in America too. And while we're in England, not quite as bad as in America, where I gather in California, you can't even smoke in the whole state in a public place, not in a bar, not in a disco. It must be horrific. Can one live there, actually? I don't know. But I don't think it can be very funny. Now, at the time when Sir Richard Doll, who, as he was then, provided incontrovertible proof that smoking causes cancer, the story was that 30% of the people, of smokers who did smoke, ended up getting cancer. And of course, while I'm well aware of the fact smoking is an attractive habit, and I had tried for quite a while to give it up and rather despise myself for not being able to do so. The fact of the matter is that for quite a lot of the time, I quite like smoking. As other people like to drink and indulge in other activities which might attract the censure of the people around them, I thought, well, should I really worry too much about it? And it is one of the spin-offs of having the honor of being able to talk to somebody like Duisberg. He said, when I mentioned this once, he said, wait a minute, well, it's not true, it's not 30%. it's 10%. I said, what? Do we to say for the last 25 years or 30 years of my life, I've been worrying about stopping smoking when there's only a 10% chance of me dying? And, well, I now know he's completely right. In other words, the causation of cancer is, I mean, they will stop at nothing. They being the public health, the health fascists, call them what you like, those who know better, besserwisser in German, as we say. I don't know what the English word is, but of course Germans have managed to have a word for everything because of the structure of the language. Now, but matters became a bit more serious when in '94, a friend of mine whose company I really valued tremendously, and above all his conversation, said he'd had a lump in his throat, in his jaw, and it was causing problems, and he was having it operated. And of course I thought, well, what do people get in their jaws and lumps but cancer? And of course, while cancer, like other forms of illnesses, things that you hope other people only have, or at least you don't wish it on them either, but you don't wish to have it yourself. I had noticed that cancer was in fact pretty serious. It hadn't improved much. Mind you, until then I thought that cancer was, while no breakthrough had been made, there had been small incremental improvements, which meant that the picture was not as serious anymore in '94 as it had been in 1960, for example, when a favorite aunt of mine had died of stomach cancer, and I was, as a young man, very sad about that. But so my reaction was, actually, I would too, because I suppose Duisburg had been linked in my mind, oh yes, I know why, with cancer, because of his, those retrovirus things that he would have been working on. I would have rung his laboratory and got his then very wise assistant, Brian Ellison, who since disappeared from the scene, but one of these tremendously clever people who young, 26, 7, 8, I don't know what they do now, but I don't know how they get themselves so clever and widely read at such an age. Anyway, I asked him, although I'd of course been out of chemistry for quite a while, tell me, Brian, I remember saying, what is it, what is a cancer cell? And, you know, be as technical as you can. I'll try and remember it, write down the difficult words, and if Joan Shenton can find out, can tell me what DNA polymerase is without batting an eyelid, I thought I should be able to work out whatever he explained to me might be wrong with cancer. What a cancer cell was chemically. Well, the answer he gave me was that typical sort of charming American laid-back way. Well, you know, Hector, benign. Oh, I try to, in particular, try to understand that. All right, troppo forte. Like this, that I could explain to me.
Non so, adesso non è che vogliamo tutta una epopea di questa soggettività. Se può dire in breve qual è il suo messaggio. Questa mi pare un'epopea della sua soggettività. Se in breve ci dice il suo messaggio.
Sì, ho capito.
Breve.
Allora, after looking into this a bit more, I discovered, in fact, that all basically I'd ever known, learned about cancer up till then was wrong, and that a totally different approach had been worked out and was available, and as Dr. Verdiglione said earlier on, this is the karma theory, who is a German doctor, a cancer surgeon who after spending something like the first 20 years of his life operating and hacking away at people, decided that something must be wrong and had a good think about it, and worked out a theory, various theories. No, it's always the same theory, and went on progressively to seek support for it, and I'm sure. Well, while I, of course, have not had, fortunately, any direct experience of it, quite a lot of centers in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria do practice his teachings, and I know a little bit about it, but there will be lots of other people who do in fact carry it out, who at some future date will be invited here to talk about it. Thank you.
Allora, proseguiamo adesso con il professor Vincenzo Pirola, no? Che fa quindi una breve comunicazione. È fisiatra, non medico chirurgo, ma fisiatra di Villa Santa. Lavora a Garbagnate, no? Garbagnate, no? Sì, esatto. Qui vicino, l'ospedale qui nel paese qui accanto. Prego.
Dunque io innanzitutto volevo precisare, mi piace sempre precisare, noi come medici siamo tutti medici chirurghi, poi dopo c'è chi fa gli interventi e chi invece si dedica soprattutto agli aspetti. No, questo lo dico per sottolineare il fatto che esistono altri operatori che non sono i fisiatri, ma sono i fisioterapisti che non sono laureati ma che fanno un ottimo e diciamo notevole lavoro concreto nel campo riabilitativo. Io mi rendo conto che solitamente chi parla leggendo fa sempre una peggior figura rispetto a chi parla non leggendo.
No,
però
ci sono persone che parlano non leggendo che fanno una pessima figura. Meglio.
Ecco, allora
per esempio gli scrittori, i poeti preferiscono sempre leggere.
Cercando di stare in un tempo non superiore ai 12-13 minuti, altrimenti rischio proprio parlando invece di arrivare magari alla mezz'ora. Allora ho scritto queste 4 paginette, cerco di leggerle magari interrompendo ogni tanto. Spero di non essere troppo banale, ma preferisco apparire banale piuttosto che non farmi comprendere. Spero anche di non essere in alcuni aspetti troppo tecnicistico, tutto al più, poi sono a disposizione per eventuali domande. Ho cercato di dare questo titolo al mio intervento, che è priorità dell'intervento della equipe riabilitativa nell'ambito della cura dei tumori e dell'AIDS. Mi pareva che potesse essere un aspetto particolare, non potendo dire nulla onestamente di nuovo, perché solitamente nei congressi si dovrebbero dire cose nuove, cose dell'altro ieri, no? E invece non potendo dire nulla di nuovo mi sembra incorretto, e inizio subito, invece affrontare questo aspetto, perché è un aspetto che probabilmente a molti sfugge, soprattutto in questo campo specifico. In una recente opera il dottor Giovanni Zotta, presidente della Commissione Oncologica Nazionale, direttore generale del Servizio per la Vigilanza sugli Enti del Ministero della Sanità, affermava: Anche in oncologia è tempo che vengono definite determinate priorità. Ci sembra che la riabilitazione possa a buon diritto annoverarsi fra queste. Frase abbastanza pesante in quanto importante. La medicina riabilitativa, infatti, e soprattutto in campo oncologico, non può essere considerata solo alla stregua di un servizio che abbia il compito di limitarsi a valutare la situazione clinica del paziente. Analoghe valutazioni sono, ad esempio, noi siamo considerato un servizio, no? Sono ad esempio proprie dei servizi di radiologia e di laboratorio che forniscono prima, durante e dopo le ore effettuate per patologie tumorali, dopo le cure effettuate per le patologie tumorali, risposte utili a stabilire gli stadi della malattia o della sua regressione e quindi degli eventuali risultati ottenuti dalle terapie. La riabilitazione, pur essendo un servizio, ha inoltre lo scopo, una volta registrata la situazione clinica e funzionale del paziente, di proporre anche una serie di interventi terapeutici. Quindi è un servizio anomalo. Essi consistono, pur ovviamente tenendo conto della patologia d'organo compromessa, in trattamenti volti al recupero delle funzioni perse o carenti relative al movimento e a ciò che lo sottende, nonché alle funzioni vegetative primarie quali la deglutizione, la minzione, l'evacuazione, la fonazione, eccetera. Si vuole in questo modo affermare, sottolineare più che altro la globalità dell'intervento riabilitativo, la cura della persona. Potrei dire con una frase che mi verrà sicuramente contestata che potremmo essere, molto strana come frase, gli psicologi del corpo. Infatti ogni azione motoria ha lo scopo di realizzare...
È infelice.
È infelice?
Perché gli psicologi sono già una rovina nazionale.
In questo senso.
Se poi addirittura vuole che siano anche psicologi del corpo, allora proprio diventa un cimitero
si dovrebbero
nazionale.
Delle ore per ragionare su questa terminologia probabilmente. Infatti ogni azione motoria ha lo scopo di realizzare le esigenze proprie e indispensabili all'essere umano, quali la mobilità, le abilità quotidiane necessarie per l'alimentazione, il vestirsi, provvedere ai propri bisogni, eccetera. A queste vanno aggiunte tutte le altre necessità che sono in maniera più specifica legate all'ambiente esterno, quali la conservazione qua non ricordo più, dei rapporti sociali e familiari e se possibile quelle azioni che permettono al paziente di sentirsi utile, come ad esempio la pratica di attività lavorative e anche ludiche. Inoltre, quanto è ciò che sottende il movimento, vale a dire tutte le strutture anatomiche che lo determinano e lo permettono, rendendolo preciso e temporalmente corretto, vanno esaminate e registrate dal medico riabilitatore. In questo senso è un po' neurologo, un po' ortopedico il fisiatra. Si intende parlare delle cosiddette funzioni cognitive, quali la memoria, la capacità di reazione, l'orientamento spazio-temporale, il tono dell'umore, la sua soglia, la soglia del dolore, eccetera, eccetera, così frequentemente depresse e disorganizzate nei pazienti oncologici. Aspetti clinici, funzionali e cognitivi sono quindi patrimonio professionale del fisiatra. Adesso si affiancheranno per le parti di loro competenza altre figure mediche, sono parte dell'equipe, e tecniche quali lo psicologo, il neurologo, l'ortopedico, l'assistente sociale, il dietologo e il fisioterapista, eccetera. Se vogliamo usare una terminologia che è patrimonio delle più recenti scuole di management, quelle cioè che fanno capo all'MBV, che è il Management by Value, potremmo affermare che al fisiatra spetta la vision, ossia la determinazione di un progetto globale che contenga gli obiettivi terapeutici. Ancora sottolineato che i fisioterapisti, nelle loro variabili differenziazioni professionali, psicomotricista, logopedista, ergoterapeuta, terapeuta del movimento somatico, eccetera, eccetera, rappresentano all'interno dell'equipe riabilitativa, assieme al fisiatra, i principali somministratori dei trattamenti terapeutici. Questi ultimi operatori non vengono considerati dei semplici tecnici, ma dovranno avere funzioni e caratteristiche appunto non meramente esecutive né tantomeno acritiche. Miglioramento della qualità della vita e contemporaneamente è contemporaneamente al recupero possibile delle funzioni motorie e cognitive quanto si propongono i servizi di medicina riabilitativa nei centri e negli ospedali generali. Questo proposito risulta quindi particolarmente importante da realizzare sì nei confronti dei malati oncologici. La necessità di un trattamento così, come prima enunciato, sfugge talora ad alcuni amministratori sanitari, in quanto la loro miopia, che non è quella degli occhi, fa loro vedere solo alcuni aspetti tecnici e economici oppure convenienze personali, e non diciamo partitiche, ma potremmo anche dirlo. La mission, cioè, non può concretizzarsi qualitativamente e quantitativamente senza la vision, e questa ultima deve pervenire da uno specialista che abbia una propria competenza ben precisa. L'orchestra, cioè, dovrà dotarsi di un direttore che possegga la giusta sensibilità musicale, che guidi e corregga i musicisti e naturalmente che conosca l'opera. Se si vuole entrare in maniera più concreta nel discorso della riabilitazione che deve essere portata a un paziente affetto da cancro, occorre conoscere innanzitutto che 1. Le patologie tumorali di maggiore interesse riabilitativo sono rappresentate dal tumore della mammella, dal tumore del polmone, e ricordiamo che queste neoplasie sono la prima, rispettivamente mammella per la donna, epidemiologicamente parlando, percentualmente parlando, e polmone secondo, il famoso discorso del fumo, che sicuramente in qualche modo non sarà la causa, ma sicuramente è una concausa. Sono poi seguite dai tumori della testa e del collo, dal tumore della prostata e degli organi endoaddominali, stomaco e colon in particolare, oltre ai tumori ossei, muscolari e del sistema nervoso centrale, che rappresentano questi ultimi non più del 3-5%. Le neoplasie che influiscono sull'AIDS sono in particolare i linfomi, e questo è il secondo punto, e la loro metastatizzazione privilegia quasi sempre il sistema nervoso centrale, quindi poi gli aspetti di movimento e di abilità quotidiane vengono influenzate, oltre che tutti gli aspetti psicologici, permettetemi di citare per la terza volta questa parola. Terzo, anche i tumori della mammella e del polmone metastatizzano frequentemente al cervello. Se ne deduce che un gran numero di pazienti oncologici presenta disabilità sensitivo-sensoriali e motorie, delle quali sono responsabili in parte la disfunzionalità degli organi colpiti dal tumore primitivo, in parte lo stato di severa depressione propria di questo tipo di paziente. È chiaro che un paziente sarà molto più depresso se sa di avere un tumore che se sa di aver avuto una gamba, o ad una specifica neoplasia primitiva del sistema nervoso centrale. L'assurdità comportamentale, e questo, se vogliamo, visto che si parlava di messaggi, è un po' il messaggio, no? Che frequentemente si realizza anche in alcuni noti istituti preposti alla cura dei tumori, è che a fronte di interventi diagnostico-terapeutici sempre più raffinati, che consentono con la pratica chirurgica di evitare demolizioni anatomiche non necessarie o eccessive, con la chemioterapia di ridurre gli effetti collaterali quando ciò è possibile, e con la radioterapia di evitare un'irradiazione non necessaria di regioni anatomiche vicine, no, al tumore, si è pensato invece troppo poco, o comunque poco, agli aspetti riabilitativi. Viene considerato un fatto secondario, ma noi abbiamo detto all'inizio che invece personaggi di rilievo ritengono che sia prioritario, assieme alla cura quella drastica della chirurgia, eccetera. Si può verificare allora che in un noto istituto nazionale dei tumori, non molto distante, l'equipe riabilitativa sia diretta da un dirigente specialista in anestesia e rianimazione, o in terapia del dolore, per carità, altro importantissimo settore al quale suppongo il citato primario dedicherà grandissimo spazio, che ovviamente non potrà dedicare a organizzare e indirizzare, ossia a vivere il momento riabilitativo. Abbiamo un farmacologo con tutte le sue specializzazioni, con tutti i suoi orientamenti, il suo modo di essere, che è quasi il contrario di quello che invece che dovrebbe essere il fisiatra, deve essere il modo di essere del fisiatra. Ma c'è di peggio. In un altro importante istituto, anche questo abbastanza vicino, ma importante quasi quanto l'altro, l'aspetto riabilitativo viene delegato ai soli pur capaci fisioterapisti, ma che, per le caratteristiche del loro ruolo e della loro preparazione, debbono limitarsi a proporre solo alcuni aspetti tecnicistici, brutto termine, comunque, del momento riabilitativo, e in ogni caso, per quanto io sappia, senza la possibilità di una reale programmazione, indirizzo e controllo da parte dello specialista fisiatra. Poiché se è vero, come si è prima accennato, che il medico fisiatra e l'equipe riabilitativa riassumono in sé una globalità di intervento sulla persona, indipendentemente dalla patologia d'organo, si deve riconoscere che tale intervento non deve essere soltanto riconosciuto prioritario, ma ciò in particolare nelle neoplasie deve attivarsi immediatamente nel momento stesso della diagnosi. Nel momento stesso che io scopro che hai un tumore, devo immediatamente pensare a cosa devo fare per, se è possibile, di risolverlo o comunque farti vivere più a lungo possibile, ma anche di iniziare immediatamente il momento riabilitativo. Quali sono i grandi rischi che possono far seguito a una sottovalutazione dell'equipe riabilitativa o a una sua riduttività in termini di assenza di qualche componente o di vicariazione del capo equipe con altra figura professionale? Sono questi sostanzialmente, questi grandi rischi: inutilità o scarsa efficacia delle terapie oncologiche in termini di qualità della vita, diminuzione del numero di obiettivi raggiungibili in termini di abilità nelle consuete azioni quotidiane. Terzo, stimolo alla ricerca da parte del paziente, stimola la ricerca da parte del paziente di terapie alternative o pseudoscientifiche non supportate da sufficienti dati in letteratura. Vedi ad esempio il caso di Bella. Cioè, e concludiamo, da un lato vi può essere un accanimento terapeutico del medico oncologo, no? Che tenga conto solo della quantità della vita, e dall'altro il tentativo da parte del paziente o dei suoi familiari di trovare altre spiagge che consentono al malato di vivere sia più a lungo che in maniera assai più confortevole. Queste iniziative invece non debbono essere incoraggiate, né quelle del medico oncologo, né quelle degli amministratori, né quelle del paziente o dei suoi familiari alla ricerca di altre spiagge, anche se usiamo ancora il termine psicologico, psicologicamente, emotivamente si possono capire, quelle del paziente e dei suoi familiari. Queste iniziative invece non debbono essere appunto incoraggiate, no? In quanto è compito dell'equipe riabilitativa di attivarsi per garantire quelle qualità della vita e quelle autonomie personali che siano ragionevolmente ottenibili, e tutto questo sarà tanto più facile quanto più verrà riconosciuto quel carattere prioritario che dicevamo all'inizio della specialità in medicina fisica e riabilitazione. Grazie.
Siamo passati dalla metafora della guerra alla metafora dell'orchestra e resta questa esigenza di dispositivi intellettuali negli ospedali. Ecco, questa è la questione, no? Qual è il dispositivo intellettuale per la cura? In fin dei conti questo, no? È l'equipe è il pretesto per il dispositivo. E quindi qual è il dispositivo di salute? Il dispositivo in direzione della salute, in direzione della qualità. Allora io ringrazio il professor Vincenzo Pirola, che ci ha dato una testimonianza dal campo con le terminologie, con le problematiche che si agitano nell'ambiente ospedaliero, e per quanto riguarda noi ci dice quale può essere il nostro compito, proprio quello di verificare, no? Verificare, instaurare, introdurre dispositivi intellettuali negli ospedali, perché c'è un'ideologia alla quale è difficile sfuggire per chi opera, per chi si trova nell'apparato, per chi si trova nel cerimoniale. Questo lo dicevamo un po' in precedenza, no? Ne accennava anche Rasnik, e comunque poi sentiremo anche altri se potrà, magari sentiremo alla ripresa, sentiamo subito dopo Rasnik sul cancro, un'introduzione sul cancro. Si resterà un pochettino per sentire quell'intervento dopo, però facciamo un intervallo per un caffè, perché un caffè è sempre, oppure acqua minerale, un intervallo di 10 minuti. David, lei ha un... tenga l'apparecchio. No translation? Sì, vorrei chiedere, lei ha un testo scritto? Accenda.
A written paper to present here is...
No, vorrei chiedere se ha un testo scritto. Sì. No, perché siccome i traduttori mi hanno chiesto se c'è un testo di averlo sotto occhio.
I have a copy. I can give it to him right now.
Sì, bene. No, perché dobbiamo collaborare per una traduzione efficace. Quindi quando c'è un testo scritto lo forniamo per agevolare la traduzione. In quanto c'è sempre una traduzione in altre 2 lingue, quindi le lingue di questo congresso sono 3, ci sarà inglese, francese, italiano. Se arriva poi il CARP ci sarà anche la lingua russa. Bene, allora già consegnato, no? Lo scritto. Sì, tra poco abbassiamo, chiudiamo la tenda. Sì. Ah, caldo, non so, troppo caldo? Sì, aspetti, dottoressa, ci penso io. Ok, va bene, basta così che poi tra poco verrà un freddo bestiale. Quindi, allora, prego.
Oh, okay. I believe I'm supposed to respond to the last talk. I've got some overhead slides that I prepared. I wasn't quite sure how to prepare for this meeting, even though I was here in July. But I think it might be useful to have something to look at other than my pretty face. And maybe you like it, I don't know. And so I'll get into it, I guess. This is a little awkward, but I guess I can make it work. I alluded to earlier the engineering approach that many people in the cancer world and the AIDS world are modeling after the the Manhattan Project for making the atomic bomb. Well, I want to address that issue right now, that engineering projects and engineers themselves are very, very different projects and people and way of thinking as compared with scientists. And I'm sorry, you folks over here, I already tested and the camera works better if I stand over here. I was an engineer for a while, so I know it, and I'm a scientist now. Engineering is very, very different. Engineers provide solutions. They make bridges, airplanes, radios, computers, that sort of thing. And you know when they do a good job, the planes fly, the bridges work, the radios work. And when the planes crash and the bridges fall in, you don't need an expert to tell you that they failed. You know it yourself. Engineers, they follow clearly defined rules. It's a very orderly process. They do it time and time again. Groups of engineers, generally, the bigger the project, whether it's building the Airbus or going to the moon or some very complex engineering project like the atomic bomb, they do it in large numbers and they work together as a team. And the profession of engineering demands integrity. You have to be willing to follow the rules and the process and work with people efficiently and agreeably in order to get the job done. And unfortunately, this engineering approach, which works extraordinarily well for things that I had just mentioned, it's an absolute abysmal failure when it comes to scientific questions, when it comes to medicine, anything that you already don't know the answer to. Science, on the other hand, and scientists ask questions. That's what we do. The best scientists ask the best questions. Scientists, by necessity, break rules. Think of all the great scientists throughout history. Obviously, Galileo is one that comes to mind pretty quickly. It's a messy process doing science. Healthy science is like healthy life. It's messy. It's not structured terribly, certainly not too much. All sorts of things intervene and complicate life and issues, but that's part of the process. Science is very similar to the arts in that individuals create. Teams, contrary to what most people think, teams do not do science. Teams build bridges, but individuals create, whether it's art or science. And science demands courage. In order to do science, you have to be prepared, like they say in Star Trek, to go where no one's gone before. If you know what you're doing, you're an engineer. If you don't know what you're doing, you're a scientist, you know? And I frequently tell people if they want answers to go to a priest or an engineer, because they're supposed to have the answers. The last person in the world to go to for an answer is a scientist, because they're not interested in answers. I can tell you, answers are boring to us. It's we like to get them and then we pass them along and go on to the next question. So it requires courage in order to do that, to go where nobody's gone before. And courage to break the rules, to not just get along with people and get your grants supported. You know, if you in the United States, if you get your grant supported, it's a clear sign that you're following the rules and you're almost certainly not doing science. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not doing science. And also, as Peter Duesberg knows very, very well, and he's been referred to a lot at this meeting, he is the epitome of, in my judgment, of the best that science has to offer. He's a courageous man. It's cost him dearly to do what it is to be a scientist. Okay, I'll continue. Okay, I told you I'm a Southerner. I tend to just talk. I'll try to speed it up just a little. I like to characterize a little bit more depth the distinction between good and bad science. Healthy science, as I said before, is very messy. It's people running around not knowing what they're doing, and they're having a lot of fun not knowing what they're doing. It's very exciting. Anybody can contribute. That's another thing about science. Anybody can contribute at any level. It's a vibrant, in healthy science, there's many voices. It's a very vibrant activity. People are talking all the time. You go to bed at night with this stuff on your mind. You dream about it. First thing in the morning, you talk to anybody that's willing to listen. As an aside, I should tell you, don't trust a scientist that won't talk to you. Scientists love to talk about what we do. And if you come across scientists, the journalists probably know that in this room. The scientists like Peter, he'll talk to anybody, and they're fun to talk to. All right, those are the ones that you can probably bet that there's some substance there. But the journalists, the scientists that shoo you away and give you quick, pat answers about things, those are the ones not to trust. Those are the ones that you really should study more, in a way, be an investigative journalist and find out, why doesn't this scientist want to talk to me? All scientists love to talk, and if they don't talk, they're doing something wrong somewhere. And healthy science is also very confrontational. Throughout the history of science, you just think about it. Again, pick Galileo, you can pick any period in the history of science. It's very confrontational because you're breaking rules, you're challenging people, and you're breaking the bounds that have been set by a lot of people previously. That's a healthy science. The turn of around 1900, the turn of the century, it was a very vibrant time when quantum mechanics was coming about, relativity. It was, and people were yelling and screaming and having great fun and wonderful debates. That was a healthy time. Think of it now in the day of this age of AIDS and cancer. How many debates do you hear? What's going on? What are the great issues, the great controversies? There aren't any. And that's a sign of pathological science. Pathological science, just like pathological societies, authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, are orderly and lockstep. That's exactly what we have, at least in the United States, and unfortunately it's metastasized to the rest of the world. This very orderly, lockstep way of thinking and way of behaving, keeping your mouth shut, and doing the right thing. It's monolithic with very few voices. We have the spokespersons who represent the majority. They always say, well, the majority of scientists agree with this, or the majority of scientists know that. I can tell you as a scientist, as soon as you start having a majority, it's probably either past its day, and it's very likely wrong. Whenever you have most everybody agreeing, it should make you very, very nervous. We're missing something. And that's where we are right now. And then the other thing is the non-confrontational aspect of pathological science. The scientific community, actually this is I got this from Jean Lamarck. So there's nothing new here. And I've just updated it for the situation right now, the current situation with AIDS and cancer. The scientific community is controlled by two types of individuals working together. The skillful elocutionists who know how to make their views prevail, and then the vast majority are the persons without any real talent, but who simply add supporting materials to the theories already in vogue. And that's exactly what we have with AIDS and cancer. With AIDS, it's everything about HIV. And everything that's published or funded is just little bitty tidbits more on top of that mountain of manure. And the same thing with cancer, with the oncogene hypothesis that Peter, you'll hear a lot more from Peter and me later, our little controversial approach that we believe will replace the oncogene theory of cancer. Well, how do you know if what you hear on television or you read in the newspapers or you go to a meeting like this, how do you know that something's right? I'll just read this for the translator. In the absence of substantial evidence, it is often difficult to distinguish between insight and lunacy. And how then do we proceed? What do we do? The current way is to go through the peer review process and let those people protect the public, protect other scientists, protect the taxpayers, and give the imprimatur to whatever it is that the current paradigm or dogma will let out. But that's not the way that I'm suggesting that we go. You need a vibrant debate. When you don't have a vibrant debate, that is a sign that something seriously is wrong. And if in doubt, publish. Publish. Rather than the current peer review system is if in doubt, don't publish. There was Max Planck, a famous physicist around the turn of the century, who was actually the first one to even begin the quantum physical world, and he never accepted quantum physics. But he was the grand old man of physics, and he was the editor of very powerful journals. He didn't accept quantum physics, but he never stopped a paper from being published. And that's what we need. That's a man of both courage and integrity. And we don't have that, or very few of these, in the scientific community right now. There's a few, and I can tell you there are very few, and Peters, I think, has found both of them that will actually publish some of his papers. And we have to, just to reiterate what I was talking about earlier, we have to restructure the peer review process. The peer review process, instead of trying to prevent things from being published, it should improve the quality of things that are published. And what I mean by that, it would be more like an editorial process, where from my own experience, the best reviews that I've ever gotten weren't the ones that necessarily said it's the greatest paper in the world, but they either pointed out things that I didn't consider or wasn't clear, or maybe even an error, they're very specific about these things. And you see, yes, I agree, I fixed this, I changed that, or sometimes you don't agree, the other guy didn't really understand it. But it makes for a better contribution to the scientific literature. The peer review process should aid in improving the quality of the papers, rather than trying to limit the papers that get published. And again, multiple sources of funding. With the single source of funding that we have in the United States for virtually all scientific medical research, and every penny of the AIDS money goes through Anthony Fauci's fingers, that there's no hope for doing anything or getting funded or getting published on anything other than the HIV dogma in that case, or if it's the National Cancer Institute, it would be oncogenes. So we have to change that. And Professor Verdiglione is very reassuring words that, at least here in Europe, they're trying to do something to offset the very serious problem that we're experiencing in the United States. Now, I don't want to belabor this. I've got lots and lots of slides. I'm not going to use them all. So this may be a good place to bring this to an end at this point. I believe this must be Italian, ignoratio, or lazy argument. And it's just 3 stages. How did I say it? I'm sorry? Oh, it's Latin. Okay. Close. Yeah.
Dove Dante
Yes.
colloca
Dante.
Ignavi.
Ignavi. Okay. Ignavi ratio. I put the word oncogene in here. It could be anything. It could be HIV, and I'll just read this again for the translators. There's 3 phases that paradigms go through. When, for example, the oncogene advocates failed to explain cancer by the ordinary process of causality, they resorted to a burdensome jargon of names. Gatekeepers, caretakers, what was the other one, Peter, you told me? Landscapers. These are supposedly very highly technical things we're talking about. Gatekeepers and all sorts of bizarre names that they're throwing out, etc. And then they also provide a very thick cloud of hypotheses, just one after the other, and nobody can make any sense out of it. We're beyond that stage now. It's still, they still do a lot of that with cancer and AIDS, but we're actually into the second stage with both of these. The fate of such arguments is always the same. They attract and captivate for a while. They go to the building of a new creed, which contemporary orthodoxy defends under its severest penalties. That's the stage that we're in now. That we're being subjected to the severest penalties of non-funding. I thought Peter had 22 grants turned down. It's 23 now and counting, I guess, ever since he criticized the HIV hypothesis. Most of the grants are for cancer, by the way. They're punishing him and other people for being courageous and doing the right thing. And then the third stage, which we're, I think, on the verge of entering in both HIV and AIDS and cancer, is in time but the time comes when these arguments lose their fascination and cease to satisfy and convince. Many of us in this room are already at this stage, but certainly not the establishment. Their foundations are discovered to be insecure, and in the end, no one troubles to controvert them. And my guess is, at some point in the next few years, so many people, it will become popular to say, oh, this AIDS, how could everybody have been so stupid? It's not contagious. We all knew it, you know, and Peter Duesberg will have more friends than he ever knew he had. They said, I knew that Duesberg was right all the time, you know. That's right around the corner, I hope, and possibly with the oncogene thing too. But we're not there. So I'll leave it at that and talk more later, I guess.
Stavo riflettendo su questa oncogene. Cos'è oncogene? Genesi? Sicuro? Che è oncogenesi? E solo in questa accezione va inteso? No, perché c'è stato anche, per riprendere Lucien Sfez, chi ha detto come c'è un gene per l'infedeltà, c'è anche un gene per il cancro, no? No, nel senso, in questa dottrina della predestinazione, dottrina calvinista e luterana della predestinazione, secondo cui, appunto, naturalista, ovviamente, dottrina naturalista, e questo sarebbe una cosa su cui riflettere, no? Il naturalismo alla base anche delle dottrine religiose. Allora, sentiamo adesso forse una Huw Christie? Huw Christie, breve intervento di Huw Christie? Sì, non l'abbiamo sentito ancora.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Lei ha uno scritto? Ha uno scritto?
No, I have overhead projectors.
Ah, va bene. Ha anche lei lucidi?
Domani o...
No, prego.
20 minuti? 20
20 minuti, 30 minuti, madonna.
No?
Sì, va bene. 20 minuti.
Okay.
20.
20.
20.
20.
20.
Sì, sì. Ok, grazie. Sorry about standing in your way here, but well, yes, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to show you some data on the overhead projector. Perhaps I should. It's about HIV and AIDS, and my own entry into this was not from a scientific background. I had the experience of a positive test for HIV 7 years ago. And at the time, I learned that you can have a positive test for HIV for reasons that are not HIV. In my case, I'd had a hepatitis vaccine, and they thought there may be some potential for cross-reaction. So one hospital tested me negative, in fact, for the vaccine antibodies, and another hospital quite soon after tested me positive. And that was my first idea, that the medical testing technology wasn't 100% certain. And so I began to look closer, and with other people and colleagues, and with the help of Peter Duisberg and other people who were important to me in this room. I now work at Continuum magazine, and we publish a journal where scientists and academics can publish work about biotechnology and HIV in particular. So I like to start with this quote: listening to both sides of a story will convince you that there is more to a story than both sides. When we talk about HIV and AIDS, often we talk as if we can identify HIV without ambiguity, and it's the methods of construction for knowledge of whether HIV is present or absent that I want to just show you about this afternoon. In the usual clinical world, there are just really 3 tests which a person, if you or I go in to get an HIV test, might be given. The antibody test, anticorpi, the Western blot, or another design of the same principle, the ELISA, and then a genetic test, the polymerase chain reaction. And then there are some other tests, direct antigen tests, and attempts to do direct virus isolation. But these are very uncommon. You and I would be given either a Western blot, or an ELISA, or perhaps a PCR. So let's look at this Western blot test. This is a table of how the Western blot is used in different parts of the world. Or for people in English, it's the international variations for HIV diagnosis on Western blot antibody tests. And I'd like to draw your attention to the left-hand side here. These are the proteins which are said to make up HIV. And along here is a table of which of those proteins, if they're found in your blood, would mean that you had HIV. And you can see that from country to country, or from culture to culture, there are great differences. For example, in Africa, it's necessary only to have any 2 from the top group, and everything else is optional. But in Australia, you must have one, and 3 from there, so you must have 4. So straight away, you can see that if you lived in Kenya and you could afford to buy an airplane ticket to fly to Sydney, somewhere over the Indian Ocean, perhaps you don't have HIV anymore because of the kind of definition that is used in the different jurisdictions. The US Food and Drug Administration, the US Red Cross, the US CDC all have their own conflicting definitions by which a person might have HIV in one, but not in another. And the MAC study, which is the largest study of gay men and HIV in America, was the easiest criteria by which to have gay men and HIV, I should say, in America, was the easiest study by which to have HIV. You had only to have one protein. Now, this test is considered the best test and is used most widely all around the world. But even so, the antibodies which are looked for by that test are generated in a number of other conditions. So this is a quick list. I could give you a photocopy later of some of the conditions which are listed in the scientific literature that can produce antibodies which will react on one or another design of HIV test. So you can see some very common things: leprosy and tuberculosis, flu vaccination, hepatitis B vaccination, which was significant to me, and the list goes on. There's 63 of them, in fact. This is 63 conditions that could make a positive HIV test. Organ transplantation, autoimmune diseases, the list goes on. And that's other retroviruses, antimitochondrial antibodies, hemophilia. Well, that's the Western blot test in England since 1992, even though the Western blot with its different criteria is considered the better test. We don't use it. We use the ELISA test, which is cheaper by a factor of about 40, I think. So I just want to draw your attention to what the manufacturers of the ELISA test say. I view this as an attempt to work out whether we know if a person is ever infected with HIV, or actually, do we know that HIV exists? This is the product literature from the manufacturer of the ELISA test, which would be used in Italy surely, but in combination with the Western blot. This microphone is so sort of clumsy. For the English speakers, yes, it's the same thing. So with all those different criteria and with all those conditions which can cause a positive result, of course legally the manufacturers of these tests say that there is no recognized standard for establishing the presence or the absence of HIV. I think that's a very important thing for anybody to know. If there's no recognized standard for establishing the presence or absence of HIV, then how is somebody ever given a diagnosis that is not dependent only on local perceptions? This is a table of research carried out in New York, the same ELISA test. I just want to show you what happens if the serum of an individual is not diluted before the test. On the left is the serum of 10 medical physicians, and their blood was diluted 400 times before the test was performed. And this is normal, and say the manufacturers this is necessary. You must dilute 400 times anybody before you do an HIV test. And so they are all negative, they're non-reactive down here. And he took the same blood, Dr. Roberto Giraldo, and he performed the test without dilution. And they're all reactive. In 1988, the US Army tested over 1 million soldiers and found that even in healthy military recruits, half of the 12,000 first positive ELISAs were negative second time around. And after a second positive ELISA, 2/3 failed to react on a first Western blot. And after some first Western blots, failed to react on a second Western blot. That red asterisk, the red mark shows where the testing procedure ends in England. We don't move on to the Western blot. So from that group of people in England, we would have 6,000 positive people. And if we had used the Western blot, then that would drop by a great number. So, there's another kind of test for HIV, which is not the antibody test. It's the viral load test or genetic test. But I feel you should know what the manufacturers of the viral load test for HIV say about their product. This is a particular manufacturer, Roche pharmaceutical company. They make a viral load PCR test called Amplicor, and they say the Amplicor HIV monitor test is not intended to be used as a screening test for HIV or as a diagnostic test to confirm the presence of HIV infection. To me, it's starting to seem very difficult to know then whether somebody ever has HIV or to tell them what their infectious status is. That PCR test was invented by the Californian Dr. Carey Mullis, for which he got the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1993. This is a letter which he wrote to the British High Court last year during a controversial court case. He says, I am the inventor of the polymerase chain reaction. The translator, you should know that it's on the screen in Italian, so I am the inventor of the polymerase chain reaction method, for which I received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1993. I understand the results of PCR testing for the so-called Sorry?
Allora, vedi, qualcuno può leggere da vicino, allora vediamo.
Can the translator tell me what Professor Verdiglione said?
Allora,
Mi dispiace.
allora, sono l'inventore del metodo appunto PCR, per il quale ho ricevuto il premio Nobel della chimica nel 1993. Questo dice Carey Mullis. Mi risulta che i risultati risulta che i risultati dei test PCR per il cosiddetto virus umano da immunodeficienza HIV sono spesso presi come evidenza per la malattia da sindrome di immunodeficienza acquisita, l'AIDS, dalla professione medica. Questo è deplorevole perché una supposizione del genere non è messo a fuoco, perché una supposizione del genere è senza fondamenti scientifici. Il lucido non è messo a fuoco. Dunque, ed è spesso usata come giustificazione per cure che, ecco, bravo, volevamo chiederlo già da un'ora, per cure che richiedono l'assunzione di farmaci pericolosi. Nonostante questa supposizione sia tenuta in larga considerazione, non c'è nessun accettabile riscontro scientifico, e intendo evidenza presentata in conformità di standard scientifici recensiti da riviste scientifiche che studino il campo, che sostenga questo punto di vista. Che questa sia una tragedia nella pratica della medicina occidentale non lo rende meno vero. Mentre questa controversia si sta risolvendo da sola nell'arena medica e biologica, i tribunali del mondo, dove la questione può essere solo meno compresa, non dovrebbero occuparsene. Invece noi sappiamo in Italia che ci sono state condanne proprio in base a presunta trasmissione di HIV tra marito e moglie, tra partner, con processi e condanne penali in Italia. Allora, ci sono troppi interessi personali rappresentati come motivazioni falsamente altruistiche da parte di cittadini o funzionari pubblici falsamente preoccupati perché la questione possa essere razionalmente affrontata, diciamo, da un tribunale in modo relativamente non informato. Per il momento l'unica posizione assennata e comprensiva e intelligente, diciamo, che la magistratura dovrebbe tenere è quella di starsene zitta. Grazie.
Good, thank you. 5 minuti. Okay, the English speakers will may be familiar with that letter, but you can have a photocopy if it's of interest later on. Okay. The solution to this problem, these problems of specificity and you would think might be easy. Simply get the virus itself. Don't use all these indirect tests. That would be called virus isolation. And the term virus isolation has been used often in the history of HIV and AIDS. But when you look closely, even at the recent claims for the discovery of HIV, you find that virus isolation is not achieved. This is this is only in English. This is to do with the claim last year by Beatrice Hahn that HIV came from chimpanzees, and you will notice that she says because virus isolation from the autopsy tissues was unsuccessful, we used the PCR to amplify 4 overlapping subgenomic fragments. That is very usual. It is very hard to find a scientific paper in which actual virus has ever been isolated. Different laboratories have different criteria for something close to isolation. Perhaps some particles, perhaps some enzymes, perhaps some proteins. But truly purified and isolated virus would probably look something like that. This is a picture from 1965 of purified retrovirus, what's called the friend leukemia virus. If it were possible to purify and isolate HIV in order to validate the antibody tests, the indirect tests, we would expect a picture of HIV that looks like this, lots of uniform particles that show purification. Professor Luc Montagnier said this quote 2 years ago. In 1984, we saw some particles, but they did not have the morphology typical of retroviruses. They were very different. I repeat, we did not purify HIV. From the very beginning, there have been great questions about the purification and isolation of HIV, to the extent that you must wonder whether it is there at all. In 1997, a photograph was taken of purified material at the Robert Koch Institute in Germany, and this is the best that they came up with. And most virologists would say that this is definitely not a picture of purified HIV. In fact, the authors themselves refer to it as purified vesicles. It is not purified HIV. Okay, I know it's a lot of data, and I'll stop shortly. The very first human retrovirus was also discovered by Dr. Robert Gallo. It was a thing called HL23V. And there were some pictures. I'm sorry for the poor quality of the reproduction, but you see here pictures from the 1970s of the first ever human retrovirus, HL23V. Here are some particles gathered together. Here it is budding off a cell membrane, and here it is just about leaving the cell membrane. However, within a short number of years, even Robert Gallo himself acknowledged that that this was not a retrovirus. There's the Italian text. So you should know that taking a photograph is not the end of proving that something is there. It's possible to take quite a persuasive photograph and yet subsequently decide that it was not a photograph of a virus. So we don't have photographs of HIV, and perhaps we should not expect any. I'd like to stop there. There's some things I might like to say tomorrow or the next day about... Go on. Well, there we are. The thing is, I suppose, that these tests nonetheless greatly influence the lives of people. And one of the most immediate consequences, of course, is that many people believe that they are now going to die and that they must take powerful medicine. And I'm afraid this is not in Italian, but I just want to show you something about the current medicines. I'm looking forward to hearing more about them, particularly from David Resnick, protease inhibitors, over the next couple of days. But you may know that people these days say that AIDS drugs are so good that the problem is pretty much solved. This is moving on from the DNA chain terminators that Peter Duesberg spoke about before. This is moving into the new class of protease drugs. Well, this is 1999. I'm sorry for those who can't read the English, but you can see that they say Dr. Sarg concluded that the highly active antiretroviral therapy DAM is already leaking, and there's a high danger of it collapsing altogether. Failures are occurring left and right. In clinical practice, doctors see that the drugs are not working. This doctor says, we're going to have to rethink everybody. We don't know what we're doing. So please don't believe the hype around the drug therapies. Here's some data about a trial of drug therapy, highly active antiretroviral therapy. 39% of people were asymptomatic, 33% symptomatic, 28 had AIDS. By the end of the trial, 14% were asymptomatic, 39% were symptomatic, and 47% had AIDS-defining illnesses. So in the course of this life-saving trial, in fact, of course, the problem got much worse. But people are faced with the choice of whether to believe the test and take the drugs, or whether to try to find alternative solutions to their problems. Effetti indesiderati. In red you see these are the side effects of the protease inhibitor, the Zerit and Videx. Peripheral neuropathy, diarrhea, pneumonia, skin cancers, lymphadenopathy, neoplasm. In red are the ones which are associated with the AIDS condition itself. So you can take the AIDS medication and you can give yourself AIDS with it. I just want to briefly suggest that a direction, a therapeutic direction for the future may be found in this stresso ossidativo. Maybe it's important, maybe it's not. This is a book that has recently come out, 1998. Professor Luc Montagnier, the co-discoverer of HIV, was a senior editor. Oxidative stress in cancer, AIDS, and neurodegenerative diseases. There's a lot to know about the work of those scientists looking at oxidative stress as a disease mechanism. Perhaps I should only say here that the chemical process of oxidizing cultures has always been at the heart of creating what has been viewed as HIV.